Hey everyone, so this is the all-new BMW i4 M50, and this is the very first all-electric and performance car in history. And today, I'm going to walk you through it, tell you a little bit about what it is, talk about its design, its all-new tech, its electric powertrain, and how it drives. And as always, if you like this video, please subscribe to our channel, leave a like, and click the little bell icon so you get notifications for future videos. Okay, so what is the BMW i4 M50? Well, essentially, it's just an all-electric version of the BMW 4 Series Gran Coupe. So it's built on the 4 Series Gran Coupe chassis. It obviously has a 4 Series Gran Coupe body, and it has a 4 Series Gran Coupe interior. The main differences are this has an all-electric powertrain and batteries versus an internal combustion engine and a gas tank, and this has new tech on the inside from the BMW iX. As you can see, there's not much that differentiates this car from the 4 Series Gran Coupe in terms of design. They have the same shape, the same hatchback tailgate, the same flush door handles, and even the same M-style side mirrors if you compare this M50 model to the M440i model of the Gran Coupe. This car, as you can see, comes with frozen Portimao blue paint, and it looks fantastic. I've actually gotten several compliments about this color from passers-by, and it looks really, really special. It makes the car look interesting, and I think if you're going to get an i4, something all-electric and something a little more interesting than your typical BMW, then I think this color is a great choice. Although one issue about the color, I'm in like a kind of dusty, urban, cool-looking environment, and I've only been here like half hour and it's incredibly dusty already. It shows dust and grime and marks really, really well. So you really gonna need to wash this car a lot if you get this paint. Now this is the angle of the car I think works best, the rear 3/4 angle, because you could see the back end of the car, which looks pretty good. You have this cool carbon fiber lip spoiler there. You have a cool Hofmeister kink right here that works pretty well. You have the sort of flared rear wheel arch here with this nice crease that goes right through it. This whole thing looks really, really good, I think. I think it looks really nice. You also get these cool little like a flare extenders. I don't know what you would call these. They're just like little tack-on, you know, fender flares that look kind of cool, make it look a little bit sportier. They're kind of cheesy in a little bit, but they look pretty good. But as good as it looks from this angle, it's almost frustrating because it doesn't look so good from another angle. Okay, so we've discussed this front end to the point of exhaustion, but I can't help but bring it up again. I wouldn't be doing my duty if I didn't bring it up again. And this front end just does not look good. The grille is enormous. It's sort of disproportionate with the rest of the front end. The headlights look nice, but there's just no real cohesion to the front end. It just does not look good, and it ruins what is otherwise, I think, a very good-looking car, especially in this color. It's very sharp and exciting and dynamic looking on the road until you look at the front end and you go, what the hell happened there? So it is frustrating to see that giant grille on this car because otherwise, I think it's a really, really cool-looking car. Something else to note about this grille. While it is basically a big, large, flat black panel, you actually do have some intakes in there underneath for, I guess, cooling the battery. But this does not have the cool self-healing wrap like the BMW iX does, nor does it hide any super semi-autonomous driving sensors. The iX is more advanced than this car is, so that's why that has that sort of tech and this one does not. This is basically just a glorified bug catcher. Moving on to the inside. For the most part, this is a 4 Series Gran Coupe on the inside. I would say it's about 95% identical to a 4 Series Gran Coupe on the inside. If you own one of those and you get into this, you are going to notice very few differences. However, the one major difference you will notice is hugely important to this car. And that one major difference is the new iDrive 8 system. It is the all-new, the newest system BMW has, and it's the one from the BMW iX. More importantly, it shares the same screens as the BMW iX. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means you get this huge, it's basically one single screen. It's two screens, but it's one single piece, one giant horizontal bezel that goes from the center of the dashboard all the way over to almost the end of the driver's side of the dash. And it is massive. There are 2 screens incorporated into it. Your main iDrive screen, which handles all your main iDrive stuff, and your new digital driver's display, which shows you all the new kind of techno electric gauges that you get in the iX. Another thing to note about the interior of this car is that because this uses iDrive 8, which houses all of the climate controls in the iDrive 8 screen, there are no longer any physical climate controls. So all of your temperature controls, your heated seats, all of that is now in the screen, and it is missing from the dashboard right here, from the center stack right here. And you even lose the physical 1 through 9 buttons where you could configure your shortcuts and all of your little presets, which so many BMW fans loved. That is now gone from the physical controls that were typically right here in front of the driver. Now all of those things, climate control, all that is in the iDrive 8 screen, and that will be a bit of a shock to BMW enthusiasts who are used to the physical controls right here at their fingertips. Aside from those things, the only real difference is that you get some blue bits in here. So you have a blue start button, some blue trim on the shift knob, and a little blue ring around the roundel on the steering wheel. Okay, so tech. The new iDrive 8 system is very, 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 very good. It's a little bit different from iDrive 7. Not much, but a little bit. Enough to be and feel like a massive upgrade over iDrive 7 when you start to really use it. For one, the graphics and the resolution are outstanding. It looks fantastic. The colors are rich, the graphics are crisp. It's a really, really lovely system to look at. Secondly, it's a bit more intuitive. So the systems are a bit easier to use, the menus are simpler to navigate, and instead of having a bunch of different sub-menus where you click on system and then there are, car settings and this and that, and there's so many different menus like in iDrive 7, now you just hit the menu button and you get a bunch of different apps. Now this app screen might look overwhelming at first because you have a bunch of different little tile apps to choose from like a smartphone, and it can seem overwhelming unless you actually really dig into it a little bit. And then it's far more intuitive actually than you would think. For starters, there's 2 ways to look at it. There's the all apps view, which shows you literally all the apps that the car has, including, everything from your Spotify to, the weather and charging apps and all sorts of stuff, your calendars, digital keys, drive recorder, all sorts of stuff you're really not going to look at or use. However, if you click the vehicle apps button on the side right there, you get only the main vehicle apps you would need. And instead of clicking through a bunch of different submenus to find things, they're all right here. So you have your mobile devices, your charging, your exterior lighting, doors and windows, display, climate control, all that stuff is right here. And there's actually not that many of them, so you don't even have to scroll, which is really nice. They're all laid out in a very simple, easy to use manner. It's actually far more intuitive than the old system of different submenus that you had to kind of scroll through to click. And you could still use the rotary dial, so you could still scroll through them. It's actually far easier than ever before. When I first saw this, I was overwhelmed. I thought, this is too much. It's too crazy. There's too much stuff going on, too many different apps, too many different buttons to look at while you're driving. But now that I've gotten used to it, I prefer this far more. It's just easier to use, it's simpler, and it's easier on your eyes while you're driving. So moving on to the digital instrument panel in front of the driver, your new gauge cluster. Now, I like this a lot actually. It's a lot better looking than the digital gauge cluster on every other new BMW right now, aside from the i4 and iX. Not only does it look better, the graphics are cooler looking and more high tech, but it's clearer, so you can understand what you're looking at easier. It's more intuitive looking, and it's actually more customizable as well. It's still nowhere near as customizable as something like Audi's virtual cockpit or the system in the new Mercedes, which I can't think of the name, but it is more customizable than the previous Live Cockpit Professional, which is what this is called, and it's much better to use. Let me explain. So normally you have just your typical gauges. On the left you have your miles per hour, and on the right you have your e-power, which shows you how much energy you're using or regenerating. So at the bottom of the screen there's a little adaptive bar that tells you how much adaptive regen you're using, and that will change based on circumstance. So if there are cars in front of you, it will regen more. If there are no cars in front of you, it will let you coast more. If you're on the highway, it knows if you're on a twisty road. If you're on a highway, it knows where you are and uses navigation settings and all sorts of stuff on hills, whatever, to adjust the regen for you. And that's actually really nice. Now, but if you put it over into B, that just turns into like heavy regen, and you can kind of one pedal drive with that. If I press this little menu button here on the steering wheel, the little 3 bars, I can cycle through the kind of content I want in between the gauges. So you can have either just your digital speedo readout, you can have your efficiency, which is nice, you can have your assisted driving view, which kind of tells you what the car's assisted or adaptive driving is doing. You can have like a route preview for navigation, which is nice. Or your media content. So that's really cool. And while that might not seem super customizable, it is better than the previous generation of Live Cockpit Professional. And aside from those two things, the tech in here is really the same as a 4 Series Grand Coupe or really any other modern BMW. This isn't like the iX where it has all sorts of weird new, bells and whistles. This is pretty much a normal BMW on the inside. With the exception of the new iDrive and digital gauges. So what is the BMW i4 M50 like to drive? Well, I have to admit I've been very, very curious to drive this car because this is the sportiest electric car BMW has ever made. It's also the first M Performance all-electric car because the iX M60 isn't on sale just yet. So with that said, what is the very first all-electric M Performance car like? To be honest with you, it feels very much like an all-electric BMW 4 Series Grand Coupe. That's exactly what it feels like. The steering feels the same. The ride is mostly the same as like an M440i Grand Coupe, except this ride is firmer than that. And I think that just has to do with BMW trying to make this car sporty, despite it being so heavy. However, there are 2 things to note that make this car feel very different from the M440i Grand Coupe. 1, speed. This car is bonkers fast, as I will now demonstrate. So we're at a stop. Launch control active. Go. Thing is real fast. And the other thing is the noise.
One of the big things for me was we can make the whole world sound differently.
The very first sound that Hans and myself composed together was the start-stop sound for the electric vehicles.
We finally get a chance to harmonize the world.
Now, you might be thinking, Nico, you're crazy. How could an electric car have noise? Well, BMW is quite clever. See, most car companies now that are making electric cars are adding in artificial noise to the cabin to make driving an electric car more interesting. But BMW went one step further. They hired Hans Zimmer, the award-winning composer, the world-famous composer, the guy who scored The Dark Knight and The Lion King and so many other incredible movies and has recorded so many incredible albums. He is one of the greatest composers in the world, and BMW hired him to make the noises for their car. And there's something incredibly cool about that. And when you turn it on, it's called BMW's Iconic Sounds. When you turn it on and engage sport mode, it sounds like you are driving an alien spaceship. It is so entertaining. It actually blows my mind. I did not think I was going to enjoy it as much as I do. I absolutely love it. It's Star Wars. It's straight Star Wars stuff. It's fantastic. What I love about what BMW did with the sound is that it's so well calibrated that it adjusts the noise to the exact level of throttle input you give. So if you give a little bit of throttle, it responds accordingly. If you give a lot of throttle, it responds accordingly. But it isn't just like an on-off switch. It's not just a volume knob where it just goes from, quiet to loud depending on your throttle input. It actually changes and kind of morphs. It feels I don't want to say organic because that's not the right term, because it is very electronic and you know that it's fake, but it feels like it's supposed to be there. It feels like that's what the electric motors are actually doing. And you know that it's fake. You know it's synthetic because you can turn it on or off and it comes to the speakers, and they totally, advertised that Hans Zimmer made these noises. But he and the team of BMW did such an incredible job that it feels appropriate. And that is a remarkable achievement, to create something that you know is fake, that the driver knows is fake, but it feels real. It's genuinely fantastic. I have no other word for it. It's brilliant. It even makes noises when you regen. So there's no one behind me right now, so I'll do this. I'll slop the shifter into B to engage the most extreme regen. So let me get up to speed a little bit, and then so you get like a deceleration noise under regen. So anytime the motors are doing something, you're getting a noise, which gives you an incredible amount of feedback, audible feedback, such as you would with, a supercar engine or something like that, with a high performance engine. And though it's not the same, it isn't as thrilling, I would argue that it's almost as entertaining, because it is so sci-fi and so novel and so futuristic that there's something entertaining about it that I really enjoy. Also, it's honest. You see, in most modern BMW internal combustion cars, you get fake engine noise anyway. You're getting artificial engine noise pumped through the speakers to enhance the audible experience. And while that's fine, and we're all used to it by now, that feels more dishonest than this system, because BMW is not only admitting that this is fake, they're advertising it. It's a selling point of the car. Hans Zimmer made these noises. So there's something very honest about that to me that I appreciate. They're saying, look how fun and how cool these noises are. I mean, listen to that. That's awesome. But what is it like to actually drive? What's the steering like, the braking, the handling, the dynamics? What is it actually like? To be honest with you, a bit disappointing. The steering, even in its sportiest mode, is totally lifeless. It's accurate and it's direct, just like a 4 Series Grand Coupe, but just like a 4 Series Grand Coupe, it's totally lifeless. The suspension is a little bit too firm. Even in its comfort setting, it is surprisingly firm. And in a car that weighs this much and is this quiet, you kind of really notice just how firm it is, even over small bumps. It's to the point where I actually cringe and wince when I know a relatively big bump is coming. It's real sports car stiff, but the problem is you don't get the sports car handling trade-off. So it doesn't feel like a sports car, but it rides like one. Admittedly, the massive 20-inch wheels and rubber band tires don't help, but it is what it is. That's the price you have to pay if you want style, I guess. One thing I really like, the brakes are great. And admittedly, a lot of that is regen. And the one pedal driving works really well. And actually, it's a great feature for when you're driving hard, because if you need to tuck the nose in, to a corner or something, you kind of just lift off and regen a little bit, and it works better than braking, in my opinion, for that sort of thing. And I actually really like that. So the brakes are great, and when you actually do stomp on the brakes, they really bite hard. It's pretty impressive considering the weight of this car. It's very quiet in here, which is good on the highway. It's very refined, as you would expect from an electric car. The problem with that is that it doesn't, because the suspension again is too firm, you hear every thump and bump, and it doesn't really make a great GT car because of that. So you're getting that quiet refinement of a good highway cruiser, but because every little bump is not only felt but heard, it kind of ruins it a little bit. So I'm struggling to see what this car is. It's not a great GT car because it's too stiff and it's too loud from the suspension on the inside. But it's also not a great sports car because it's too numb and it's too heavy. So I kind of struggle to see the point, like the sort of car BMW wants this to be. It's sort of this halfway point between being a GT car and a sports car, and I don't think it's particularly good at either. Its performance is there. It is a rocket ship. I mean, as you saw before, 0 to 60 in 3.99 seconds. It's a rocket ship. But it doesn't handle like a sports car, so it's kind of odd. The practicality is there, though. It has a good enough back seat for me to put 2 car seats in the back and have both my children without either front passenger being uncomfortable and both of my children being comfortable, so that's impressive. It also has a big trunk because it's a hatchback, so that's impressive. I was able to fit strollers and bags and all sorts of stuff in the back throughout my week with this, and it was no problem at all. It was great. In terms of range and efficiency, it's okay. I've been averaging about 2.6 miles per kilowatt hour, which is not great, but I've also been driving like an idiot. So that's really maybe not very fair to the car. But it's been fine. It gets the range it says it's going to, so it'll do about 200 and 250 miles per charge, per full battery. So what is this car? Who is it for? And would I recommend it to that person? Well, this is a daily driver. This isn't a GT car. This isn't a sports car. This is a good car to drive as your everyday, take the kids to school, go to work, that kind of car. That's what this is for. This is your daily driver. It's a bit on the firm side, but I think the trade-off of its blistering performance and its all-electric powertrain are worth that firm suspension penalty. And as a daily, I think it's great. It is efficient enough and has a long enough range to be used every day, as long as you charge it up at home, preferably every night, depending on how often or how far you drive every day. And its performance is so impressive that it will entertain you on those, drives home from work when you need to blow off some steam. It is bonkers fast, and that will probably never get old. It's also practical enough and roomy enough to be used as a daily if you have a family, such as myself. I have a family, and it worked perfectly for me. So for someone like that, this car is perfect. Your daily commute, doing the kid runs to school, and all that stuff, this car will suit that person just fine. So that is what this car is and who it is for. Would I recommend it to that person for the money? Now that's where this gets a little bit interesting, because this car starts out at about $64,000, which is actually quite good value. This one is $82,000, and that's too much money. That is a lot. For that much, you're knocking on the door of the BMW iX xDrive 50, and that is a better car than this in pretty much every single way. So I think that this car gets too pricey with options. Admittedly, a lot of that is this paint. It's very expensive, this frozen Portimao blue. It's very cool, but it's very expensive. And this car admittedly has a ton of options, but still, if you want to spec it the way you like, it can get very pricey very quickly. There's also the problem of the BMW M3 Competition. Now that car is around the same price as a decently spec'd i4 M50. It's faster, it's more fun to drive, and I think it's actually even probably a little bit more comfortable because it's more sorted. It's just as firm, but because it kind of controls its body mass better, because it's lighter, it's just a little more controllable, and it feels a little bit better, even over rough pavement, I think. And I've driven that car extensively, so I can compare it to this pretty well. So for the same money, I think I would prefer the M3 Competition. However, if you want to get the entry-level version of this car, the $64,000 base price version of this car, which squeaks under the M3 Competition's price point, if you're okay with that, I think this is a good car. I really do. But once you start getting to that $75,000, $80,000 range, I don't see the benefit of this versus the M3 Competition unless you really, really want an electric car. And admittedly, in its defense, people who are buying this really, really want an electric car. As a daily driver, all electric car, I think this is a great choice. as long as you keep the options list in check. As long as you don't go closer to 80 grand, I think this is a good value. I think this is a really good electric daily. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, if you like the video, please subscribe, leave a like, and click the little bell, and I'll see you next time.